I met Jack Robson approximately 9 years ago through the Memory Project, which brings veterans into the classroom. Jack served in World War II in the British Airborne. He made three successful drops into Sicily with the Americans, on D Day with the British, and into Market Garden with the Freed Polish Airborne. Jack was also captured in Market Garden and sent to a prison camp for the remainder of the war. Jack came and he spoke to many classes of mine over the years and told them of all his war adventures. He is now in a nursing home at 93 years old. I still keep in contact with him. Every Remembrance Day and D Day, I call Jack still, and only simply to say thank you. And Jack is always very sentimental on the other side of the phone, and he says, "You're the only one that ever calls, not his own children, not his own grandchildren." And I think the greatest honor that Jack ever bestowed on me was when I went to visit him with my daughter and my wife. He actually gave me his wartime medals, and he said, "You will appreciate these more than my own grandkids will. So I want you to have them. So one day they'll be passed on to my daughter too, to say, I guess, at least we forget."
You know, when I was a kid, I used to really like going over to my grandfather's house, and one of the reasons I liked going over there was, he was such a great storyteller. He used to read a lot, and that, that really showed in a lot of his stories. He'd give so much detail, and we'd paint this picture, and we just kind of felt like we were right there with him in those stories. But I used to tell stories about what it was like growing up in the Depression and what that was kind of like, and different things. But he also tell us a few stories about what it was like to serve during the war. And in his living room, he used to have this chest where he kept a lot of things that were kind of near and dear and personal to him. And when I got to be a little bit older, one day he went back in that chest and pulled out some of these pictures. He pulled out a picture of a ship he used to serve on. I think the name was the SS Ralph Sims. And he started to tell us about a time when he was in Merchant Marines. He'd bring supplies back and forth between Europe and North America, and how they were out to sea one time, and on the way back, German U-boat popped up and sent off a torpedo. It hit their ship, and their ship was going down. What that whole kind of chaos was, knowing the ship was going to sink, and trying to scrounge together whatever you can, and just before the ship went down, the U-boat captain came over and asked him if everything was okay. If sorry he had to do that, but this was war. He wanted to know if he was able to get a call off back to the Navy so they could come pick him up, or if anybody was coming to get him. And Papa said, "Yeah, we did that. We should be okay. Thanks for asking." But what Papa didn't realize at the time was U.S. Navy was kind of scared to go out in those waters because they knew German U-boats were out there sinking ships. And so Papa and his shipmates were kind of stranded out there, and so they were able to kind of scrape together whatever debris they had floating around, and they made these temporary rafts and floating around, and um, they were out to sea for 18 days before another boat came along to spot them. So he kind of told us what that whole experience was like, and how not having anything to eat, or not knowing if they were going to live or not, and how what they used to do for food is uh, these little fish would kind of come up and they'd be interested in what this debris was kind of floating in the water, and guys were trying to scoop fish up with their bare hands, and they would take wooden sticks or planks, whatever they could, and try to whittle them into a sharp point and try to spear some fish, and have them eat that fish raw. And how um, guys started to turn upon each other because they didn't think there'd be enough food to last, and what that whole experience was like, and how grateful they were when another ship came along and spotted them, and saved their lives. And so, this 2 minutes I want to take today to remember somebody. I remember Papa and what all he went through, and how grateful I am that he didn't give up, and how he fought to stay alive, and because of that, I'm here today, and I want to thank you for that.
Mom, can you tell us a little bit about our family history during the war?
Your grandparents, my mother and my father, was born in Budapest, Hungary, back in 1925, and then the war started in 1939. But Hungary was very fortunate that they weren't taken by the Germans. or the Germans did not invade Hungary until 1944, where at that time anybody that was Jewish was taken. And so Papu Nanu and both their parents, and they each had a younger brother and other family members that were all taken by the Germans, put on a train to Auschwitz. Unfortunately, both my grandparents, my uncles, and other family members did not come back from the war. They were gassed instantly when they arrived. And the only survivor was my father on his side and my mother on her side. Nobody else remained. He arrived back home sometime in late 45, I'm not sure. And then in 46, he was introduced to my mother, who also came back. Basically, what you've seen on TV, weighing about 75 to 80 pounds, emancipated. They had nobody, so they decided to get married mid-June of 1946, just to have somebody, a companion. A year later, I was born. I'm an only child. And then we were doing okay. And then the Russians invaded Hungary in 1956, October the 23rd to be exact. Following that invasion, I used to look out the window and I would see the trucks, the armored trucks, with the Russians patrolling with dead bodies in the back. And my mother had had enough. And she told my father, that's it, we're leaving. And 2 months later, we arrived here in Halifax. February the 4th, 1957, we crossed the Atlantic Ocean. Took us 2 weeks, so it was winter time. And to start a new life in a new country where we could be free. We didn't have to worry about the Germans, Russians. We didn't have to worry about being Jewish. And even though my father, as I said, tried to hide the fact, it's not something that you can completely turn your back on. So the war in various ways, be it Second World War, that took the lives of many of my family members. That's what the war has done, or the memories of the wars has done for me and my family.
And that's how we're going to spend our Remembrance Day, remembering our family.
Camel Bay